Welcome to our Facebook live stream. This week we are celebrating NAIDOC Week in recognition of the history, culture and achievements of our First Nations people. Before we get started, I would like to pay my respects to traditional custodians of the land we're coming from and the lands across Victoria and Australia this NAIDOC Week. So I pay my respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's connection to land, sea and community. I'm streaming from Wurundjeri country today in the beautiful Kulin Nations, and pay my respects to elders and community of the area that I'm coming from, as well as across Australia. Fostering Connections would also like to acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and this always was, always will be Aboriginal land. So today we are talking specifically about fostering Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children in Victoria. If you're listening to this live stream from different parts of Australia, some of the advice that we give might be slightly different in your areas, but in general, I think most of the principles will remain relatively the same. So hopefully you all get something out of this today that you can take into your journey towards becoming a foster carer, or if you're not quite ready yet, if you're just gathering information, that is okay too. So today's session will be mostly a Q&A with our wonderful guest speakers, who I'll introduce in a moment. But if you do have any general questions about fostering, you can always call us at Fostering Connections on 1800 013 088, or you can pop your questions into the chat on Facebook or Zoom, wherever you are, and our lovely Bronwyn will answer you in the text boxes there as well. As I said, I'm pleased to introduce our wonderful guest speakers today, who are joining us from ACCOs around Victoria. So I will let them explain in a moment what ACCOs are, but broadly speaking, there are 6 ACCOs in Victoria who provide foster care, and a number of others that provide different services to Aboriginal community and children in Victoria. So we're really pleased to have speakers here today from VACCA, Njernda and Rumbalara, so different parts of Victoria, different communities. And I will let them introduce themselves to you all now, starting with Kylie.
Oh, hello everyone, welcome, and I'm really glad that you could join us today, and especially to celebrate NAIDOC Week. I'm going to start with an acknowledgement. I'm standing here on the incredible Dja Wurrung country, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past and present here on this land. And I'd also like to pay my respects to all the wonderful Aboriginal colleagues and families and children that we get to work with. So thank you for that. I work at VACCA and I'm in the foster care recruitment team. VACCA's been around for a really long time, and we have had a foster care recruitment program for quite a number of years. And I really enjoyed the work that I do, but I really enjoy going through the journey of people who are looking at becoming foster carers and going through that journey of them being assessed and accredited and then caring for Aboriginal children. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Kylie. Also from VACCA, we have Victory here with us today. Would you like to introduce yourself, Victory?
I would absolutely love to. And yeah, Yama, thanks to those that are zooming in. I'll kick it off with an acknowledgement in my language, blessed enough to know a little bit of my language. So in Gamilaroi, Yadagawa, Yamagay Naya, Victory, Dark Gamilaroi, Pilagi, Wodongiri, Naya, Yalagi Maga, Winningay, Wurundjeri, Marigalga, Nangu, Wale Barga, Buddha, Gagiga, Gabaninda. And for those that don't know Gamilaroi language, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm on the lands of the Wurundjeri people today, and pay my respects to those elders in the past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge the stolen generations, those that are still searching for community, for kin, for countries, those that have made it home, and those that rest in the dream time with their ancestors. And I'll continue on and go on to say that, yes, it is NAIDOC Week. Yes, it is time to celebrate, but we should also take the time to commemorate before we celebrate. Let's not forget about NAIDOC, what it started as. It started as a protest, as a fight for a voice for communities. So let's just acknowledge those that came before us, those elders, those community leaders whose shoulders we stand on today. We're they're the reason that we get to celebrate this week, this amazing week. So yeah, I kind of introduced myself already in my acknowledgement language, but my name is Victor. I'm proud Dark and Gimilaroi man. I grew up on Dudoro, Waver and Wiradjuri country up Orbi-Wodonga way. And as Kylie said, I work for VACCA too. Well, I work for VACCA, worked for VACCA for a bit, around about 3 years, and she kind of touched on what us as an organisation already do. But we've been around since 1977, statewide organisation, not just delivering foster care, but also a range of different amazing programs, which don't have enough time to talk about. So I'll just shut up.
Thank you so much, Victoria. That was beautiful. Thank you for that acknowledgement. Sharon. Oh, you're still muted, Sharon. The joys of Zoom and streaming.
Sorry, got too excited. Hello, everyone. I'd like to start by acknowledging the First Nations people and the elders of the lands we're all on. I'd like to pay my respect to elders past and present of the Wilichika and Yorta Yorta peoples, the traditional custodians of the land I'm on here today at Njernda. I've been the foster care recruiter, assessor and trainer at Njernda for 1.5 years. Our foster care program here is still fairly young. It's been going for 4 to 5 years.
Fabulous. Thank you, Sharon. So, of course, our session today is to talk about providing foster care for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children across Victoria. And the way that that looks, depending on the different areas that you're in, is that you will have different agencies that you can reach out to directly to start your foster care journey. So I will get oh, I'm so sorry. I've forgotten one. I do apologise, Stacey. I would love for you to introduce yourself before I kick off and get going in my spiel. So I do apologise for taking the mic. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
That's all right, Jasmine. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm on the land of the Yorta Yorta people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and recognise their continued connection to land and water, and also recognise that sovereignty was never ceded. So I'm based at Rumbalara, which is in Marupana, near Shepparton in North Victoria. I'm the out-of-home care team leader here at Rumbalara. I've been at Rumbalara for about 4 years. I've been in the child protection and out-of-home care space for about 20 years. Rumbalara Aboriginal Cooperative was established in 1980, and we have been providing foster care for around 20 years. And in addition to foster care, we provide a whole of life service to the local community.
Fabulous. Thank you, Stacey. And I'm sorry I cut you off there. As I was saying, there are different organisations around Victoria depending where you are. So, for example, if you are in the Marupana area, Rumbalara will be the most appropriate service for you. But if you're unsure about how to get started on your fostering journey, you can always give us a call at Fostering Connections, or you can reach out to agencies directly and they'll let you know if you're in their area or where the best place to seek advice would be. So it's important for us to acknowledge that the removal of Aboriginal children from their families and communities can have quite devastating consequences to both those children and young people, the families and the communities that they come from, even when it is in order to provide protection. That's why in Victoria, the Aboriginal child placement principle is embedded into our laws. And what that means is that Aboriginal children are protected by the law to have the right to be raised within their family, culture and community. And that's vital to them growing up connected to where they come from, and also very important that we are not repeating mistakes of the past as well with stolen generations. So the Aboriginal child placement principle says that the removal of Aboriginal children must be a last resort. And if after consultation with a community-controlled Aboriginal welfare organisation, such as the ACCOs that are here with us today, deem that it is unavoidable, then the authorities must have regard to the direction of that Aboriginal welfare organisation. So really important that Aboriginal controlled organisations are participating and being consulted in that process. And that will be true regardless of where you are in Victoria, if you are caring for Aboriginal children or signing up to care for Aboriginal children. If removal is necessary, then that child must be placed within extended family. And if that's not possible, then within their Aboriginal community, within close proximity to where they come from. So later on, we're going to talk a little bit about why it's important that children stay connected to the communities that they live in, and why we need foster carers from all parts of Victoria to raise their hand, to open their hearts and their homes, and play a part within their communities so that our kids can stay connected to their own communities. If that, of course, is not possible, and sometimes it isn't possible, then in consultation with Aboriginal and Islander childcare agencies, then children can be placed with non-Indigenous family or foster carers. And so we'll talk a little bit about why it's important that if you aren't an Indigenous person and you are signing up to become a foster carer, that there are extra layers of training and support that you will receive to make sure that you're providing culturally safe care to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. So with that in mind, I am going to jump across to some of our panel questions, starting with one for Victory from VACCA. Could you tell us a little bit about the role of Aboriginal controlled community organisations in Victoria and why it's important for Aboriginal children to remain in the care of ACCOs?
I sure can if I can ever figure out how to unmute myself. To give a one sentence answer, I guess it's just, Aboriginal control of Aboriginal affairs. But if you wanted me to expand on it a little bit, that role, that role of, an ACCO is to not only provide a culturally safe space for our mob to come and go as they please, for them to come in without that fear or worry about being profiled due to the color of their skin, their background, their history, which unfortunately doesn't always happen at a mainstream CSO. There is still that unconscious bias about mob and Aboriginal people that still affects us to this day. Our ACCOs come from grassroots. They come from local communities saying that we know what's best for our communities. We know what they need and what the best way to go about it is. It's not that top-down government approach of, we'll come in and fix everything and then leave in a year or two. They advocate, they empower and strengthen their local communities. And I guess the second part of that, it's important for our Aboriginal children, our young ones, to remain at ACCOs to ensure that our children grow up strong in their culture and who they are, that they're allowed to be themselves, that they are free from that cultural abuse that they might experience in a mainstream organisation.
Thank you. Why do we need more foster carers for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children?
Don't just need more, we need more foster carers across the board, I reckon. But yeah, because of, you touched on it already, but yeah, because of that historical lens, but also the ongoing, call it what it is, racist systemic issues that are within the child welfare system. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children are still being overrepresented in the out-of-home care space. We don't just need more carers, we need more carers that are willing to go that extra mile, or what is it, 2.6 kilometers, to provide a culturally safe space and a respectful environment for our children and young people that do sit within that broken system, while we, fix it in the background sort of thing.
Absolutely. I think that's an important point you touched on, is that there are still ongoing issues within the system, but we do still need foster carers of all different types and all different backgrounds to sign up, to put their hands up and to stand up and show up for all children, but particularly for Indigenous children who are still overrepresented in our care system. Sharon, I touched a little bit earlier on the importance of staying connected to local communities. Now, of course, that is true for all children. We want to keep them connected to their schools and their extended families and the areas that they grow up in. Why is it particularly important for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children to be kept close to their communities and within their local areas?
Yeah. Community is such a big thing for Aboriginal children and Aboriginal people. And like you said, the kids are already suffering great trauma having to go into foster care anyway. But that trauma is amplified when you take them away from their local areas as well. And if we can keep kids connected to their mob, their elders, their family, friends, culture and school, it helps them to cope better, and they have supports around them from people they already know. And yeah, it is like a great big family, and you're just taking that child away from all that they've known, their family.
Absolutely. Very important to keep them connected to that local area. And as you've said, and Victory touched on earlier, that there are still members of the stolen generation who are still trying to find out where they've come from and their country and trying to remain connected to culture. And we don't want to repeat that. But unfortunately, if we don't have enough foster carers in a specific area, then those children may be moved further away from their community, and we would like to avoid that as much as possible. So if you are thinking about fostering, regardless of whether you're in regional Victoria or a metro area, if you put your hand up to care within your local area, you will be caring for local kids from that community, or that is the goal. So really important for the reasons that Sharon touched on and Victory before her as well. So thank you for that, Stacey. Sharon, again, I'm going to throw to you and ask who can provide foster care for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, and what sorts of things do you look for in carers to make sure they're suitable?
All right, we look for people who work well as a team. It's not just you working on your own, but you've got to work with the case managers and DFFH and work as a united team for the good of the child. And that's the main thing. Someone who does respect the family and culture and will keep the child connected to that. Look, we'll have any nationality. We're very diverse. Anyone that's over 18, you can be single as a couple, LGBTQI+, any nationality. Just maybe no one looking in it for the money, because that ain't going to work. You don't go in it for the money. But anyone who genuinely cares for the kids and will keep them connected with their culture and family.
Absolutely, thank you. Kylie, you've worked in the foster care recruitment space for quite a long time. Can you tell us a little bit about what the recruitment and accreditation process is like for people who are wanting to become foster carers for Aboriginal children?
Thanks, Jasmine. You do make me feel old when you say that. But I think, look, I'm going to echo what Sharon and Victory have talked about. The whole idea about keeping kids connected to their community and the place that they grew up in and their culture is really, really important for all of us. And it's important for us as a nation as well, because we know that it gives better outcomes for Aboriginal children. But I'd also like to say that the process of becoming a foster carer, it's designed in all of the ACCOs across Victoria that deliver it. It's really designed to be warm and welcoming. It's not, it is a formal process, but it's, you know, if you speak to many assessment workers or recruitment workers, people are like, wow, everyone's so friendly. And we really do have a genuine interest in you becoming a carer. And we know that, and we're really respectful of the fact that you've made a really big decision to be thinking about foster care, and you're making a decision to come and care for Aboriginal children. So we want that journey to be as comfortable for you. We want it to be a journey where you learn as much as you possibly can. And so by the end of it, if you do become accredited as a carer, you feel really comfortable in that role. You know who the connections are, you know who your workers are going to be, and you know a lot about the ACCOs. But more importantly, you know more about the community and the culture that you're signing up to support for that child. We start off with an information session, which is not too dissimilar to this, where it can be like a one-to-one, and we will meet you anywhere. Ask Sharon or Stacey or Victory. We will meet you in a cafe to do that. We will meet you at your house. We can meet you on Zoom, or you can come to a generalised information session. And once you've done the information session with us, you get a wonderful packet of documents, because like everything in life, there's compliance. When you've completed those documents, we look at training you. So the training at the ACCOs and for Aboriginal foster care is actually different from the training that you're going to get at the likes of Anglicare or MacKillop, because what we do is we have a very big lens and a very big focus on cultural awareness. And we talk about children and culture and connection and healing. And we also explore ways in which you as a carer can work around making those connections for that child, and also how to respectfully support a child in their culture. I think that journey is really wonderful. Whether you're going to be a foster carer or not, I wish everybody in Australia could do this training, because it opens up a whole, I suppose, avenue or a new way of thinking about First Nations people and how you can connect to that as a human being. Once you've done the training, which we really pride ourselves on, don't we, Victory and Sharon and Stacey? A lot of carers come out of that going, I've never really thought about Aboriginal people and Aboriginal issues, and I've never really thought about my community, and I've never known where to go. And people come out feeling quite confident about connection. Once you've done that, then we go through what we call the assessment phase, and we'll come out and visit you 3 times, maybe 4 times, and we go through a series of in-depth questions. I like to call it more like a chat or an interview. I think assessment can be a little bit scary for people, because maybe people are afraid they're going to fail that assessment, but it's really a getting to know you process. We want to know what makes you tick. We want to know what drives your motivation to care. And we really want to know what makes you want to care for Aboriginal children in particular. Like, what is that drive that has made you come to us in the first place? So the whole journey probably takes about, I reckon, 3 to 6 months in total, because after that 3 to 6 months, we will take you to an Aboriginal panel. And that panel will go through your assessment with us as the assessors, and then you'll become accredited. And as soon as you're accredited, we are ready to have children to go into your care. So is there anything else we should add to that, Victory, Sharon or Stacey, that you want to add to that? It's pretty well the journey, really. Yeah. But it's, you know, the other thing I wanted to say one more time was, it's okay that people want to inquire and find out, and at any stage of that journey, if you're not feeling like that's going to be right for you, it's okay to withdraw and come back to us later. You know, we get that things happen in life, and we understand that, you know, circumstances might happen. I mean, we've just had a world pandemic, for example. So, you know, we welcome that people can be honest along that journey, and they can come back to us at any time. So, yeah.
Thank you, Kylie. How long does that journey to accreditation usually take, from the point that somebody will make that first phone call and set up that first meeting through to panel? How long would you guess that takes?
On average, it is 3 to 6 months. Yeah, because there's a lot of work for us in the background, but we like to call it a journey because of the time that it takes, but also because of the processes. There is training and interviews and long chats and discussions, and so yeah.
Absolutely. I liked what you said about it being more informal and a bit of a conversation rather than an assessment. I think for anybody watching this thinking, you know, it's such a long process or a couple of months worth of really in-depth assessment, just know that it is a process of learning for both you and your organisation that you are with, whether that's an ACCO or a CSO. They're getting to know you, you're getting to know them, and they want you to feel as confident and comfortable to get started as possible. so that you are, you know, as prepared as possible. I'm just noticing that there is a question coming through in the chat. That journey, the time frame of that journey, I think is relating to a question about more of a kinship arrangement. But it's important to note that you go through your journey to become a foster carer, and then you look at placements. So if a placement comes up that will be well matched to your family, but you haven't quite finished your accreditation process, you won't be considered to foster for that family yet. So we make sure that you're as prepared as possible and as equipped to deal with the ups and downs of fostering before you'll even be considered for a placement. So you don't need to worry too much about that. Now, of course, if you have personal circumstances within your life that you're unsure about, you can give us a call at Fostering Connections. You'll most likely hear me on the other end of that phone call. And Bronwyn's put the number in the chat there as well. So always happy to answer any questions about how that assessment process might look for you specifically, but also we can have a chat about how that might look different at a CSO versus an ACCO as well. Kylie, you mentioned the initial foster care training. Now, that is, of course, the foundation of all training that foster carers go through. Could you tell us a little bit about the extra training that foster carers can do once they are accredited? So I'm guessing you don't just leave your carers, you know, stranded without more information. Tell us about what that further education might look like.
Yeah, thanks, Jasmine. So the training that carers would do with us during their foster care journey is called our Carers for Our Kids. And like I said, we have that training. It's got a cultural overlay through foster care with a cultural lens. But once you are accredited, there is a lot of training opportunities for you, not just with the ACCO that you might be at, but also through Carers Cafe. And Carers Cafe is connected to Fostering Connections and the Centre for Excellence and Fostering Connections Association. And the Carer Cafe offers different types of workshops and different types of foundations in training for carers as well. One of the other specialised training that ACCOs do offer as well, though, but VACCA in particular, is called Nakara's Journey. And that is 2 days of training, which follows the story of a young girl, Nakara, having to leave her family and how that experience might be for a young Aboriginal child being put into foster care. So that's something that we highly encourage our carers to look at doing once they are foster care accredited. But Carer Cafe, like I said, as well, they offer things that have specialist topics like you know, how to support children around trauma, how to look after yourself as a carer, how it affects children going into care. And I've also noticed on Carer Cafe, they're even doing carer cultural training as well. So that discovery and that journey into connecting kids to culture doesn't stop with our training. All of the ACCOs offer cultural events, cultural days, cultural workshops, specific cultural training as well. It is not something that once you do, we tick you off and say, great, you're culturally aware. We encourage everybody to still continue on that journey the whole of their lifetime and for the whole time that they have children as well. Because as many people will tell you, you know, you can't be an expert in culture, but you can certainly be an expert in connecting children to their culture and finding ways for them to do that. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kylie. Now, for anybody considering foster care at all, Carer Cafe training is free for all foster carers in Victoria, as well as kinship carers and permanent carers as well. So you have unlimited access to that training. And as Kylie said, it does cover off a lot of the topics around helping our children feel culturally safe and keeping them connected to culture. But there's also a range of other topics in there, such as things like caring for adolescents or cyber safety for children in foster care, or as Kylie mentioned, self-care for yourself. So regardless of the type of foster care you sign up to provide or whereabouts you are in Victoria, you will always have access to ongoing training through Carer Cafe. And your agency that you connect with will have a chat to you more about that once you are registered as a carer. So the training certainly doesn't stop in that initial period, and you are certainly not expected to know everything about foster care from that initial phone call. So Stacey, a question for you, just keeping on that connection to culture. Why is it important that Aboriginal children in care are connected to their culture, and how does that help with their healing and connection? Their healing and connection.
All right, so I guess healing from trauma for kids requires a positive sense of self, resilience and connection. So, you know, when we're talking about Aboriginal children in out-of-home care, sometimes we're looking at multiple layers of trauma. So we're looking at, you know, historical and cultural trauma, such as the ongoing impacts of the stolen generation and racism. We're also looking at community trauma, at family trauma, which is sometimes called intergenerational trauma, and then also the individual trauma that the child has experienced as a result of abuse or neglect that has led to them coming into out-of-home care. So what we know is that for kids to be strong, to have strong resilience and a strong sense of identity, they need to know, you know, where they come from, what their connections are. So a strong connection to family, culture and community is integral in developing their sense of self and their resilience. And, you know, they need to know where their land is, who their ancestors are, what their mother is, what their language is. Yeah, so kids that are strong in culture, we know have better, you know, health outcomes and overall better well-being and better life outcomes. Yeah.
It's happened to me now, the unmuting. Can you think of, or can you explain or elaborate on some of the practical ways that non-Aboriginal carers can help Aboriginal children remain connected to their culture? That's something that I hear a lot from people, is that they're not quite sure how they would do that. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So all children in out-of-home care should have a cultural support plan that's developed by Child Protection and their caseworkers, their care team that's around the child. And that should include information about, you know, what their mob is, what their traditional lands are, what their traditional language is, and some recommendations for the carers to help keep them connected to culture. So that's kind of the blueprint for a lot of the work, but it's also, once you've got that document, or, you know, sometimes those documents are delayed for various reasons, it's about finding out and trying to learn as much as you can about that child's specific culture, because as we know, there are many different lands and many different mobs, you know, so it's about finding out what's specific to that kid, you know, taking opportunities to participate in community events at ACCOs, establishing relationships with the Aboriginal community, you know, promoting, you know, strong Aboriginal role models to the kids, such as sports people or actors, artists, musicians and community leaders. You know, some practical things like displaying Aboriginal artwork or the Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander flag in the home, having Aboriginal books and puzzles and games, you know, where possible watching movies or TV, you know, that's got Aboriginal themes, doing Aboriginal based arts and crafts with the kids. Supporting the kids to do on-country or return to country experiences. So for children that are placed on their lands, it's about what are the cultural customs for them, and things that you can participate and support them to participate in. And if they're, you know, for whatever reason placed away from their land, it's about how can you work with the care team to enable them to go back and have those experiences where they're from. And, you know, I guess if you're not sure, seeking ideas and guidance from your caseworker.
Absolutely. I think that's an important point you touched on, seeking that advice. You will never be alone as a foster carer in trying to figure out how to come up with these ideas or how it looks in practice. There are, of course, very clear guidelines in your cultural plan, as Stacey mentioned. But also, you know, if you're unsure, you've got teams around you that can support you. And I guess that is one of the biggest benefits of providing care through one of our wonderful ACCOs, is that there are dozens of people around you within that organisation that can provide resources and suggestions and ideas and things like that as well. I would love to hear if anybody else has any experiences of providing that practical support to keep children connected to culture. If anybody has a story about an on-country experience or a return-to-country experience that they might like to share.
Well, funny you should ask that. I do, and I don't mind sharing. I am a carer myself. And I have a small baby who's nearly 2, and he's not from Njernda country, but because we live and reside here on Njernda country, which is the Jaja Warung people, he was asked to do a very special welcome baby to country ceremony. So we went up yesterday and we connected with the community. All the wonderful aunties and uncles were there. He'd got to do a smoking ceremony with all the other babies, and he was spoken to in language, and there was a special song that was sung for all the babies that, you know, makes them good, strong spirits. And then they were gifted by a well-known uncle and another well-known auntie a possum skin, which he will have with him for the rest of his life. And as he gets older, he gets to add to that, so it will become a cloak for him. And he got a really beautiful welcome certificate to acknowledge that. So prior to having that child in our care, I didn't have a lot to do with our local community, just because of the way that I worked and everything. But now I've really got to know people. We turn up to events all the time. It's not just NAIDOC week, and it's not just Reconciliation Week, by the way. We make sure that we go down to as many events as we can. We go to other people's, you know, birthday parties or special celebrations. And we've just connected in as best as we can with local people, and they all know who this child is, and he knows who all uncles and aunties are as well. And I have to say that journey has been really, really special for myself and my family, as we ourselves have made those connections and got to learn a lot more about Njernda country and Njernda traditions. And we've also got to learn more about the lives of people that live here and their stories. So hopefully that learning never stops for us, because for the child in our care, that will be ongoing forever. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kylie. And I do apologise. I knew you had that story, so I was tricking you into that a little bit. But that is a really beautiful story. As a non-Indigenous carer, have you felt welcomed by the community? It sounds like you have.
Well, look, I certainly have. Look, that's probably easy for someone like me, though. I'm pretty out there and gregarious, and I can, you know, say hello to anyone. I think if, you know, you're a bit shy and you don't really know, you begin by turning up to specific events. NAIDOC is always a great start, and so is Reconciliation Week, because without fail, your local Aboriginal community will be running events. And for us, the more we turned up at those events, the more people started realising that we were there and they wanted to come and chat, and the more that they wanted to connect to the child in our care. So it's a gradual process. It's not something where you can just turn up to an event and expect everybody to go, oh, you know, you're here. It's a getting to know you process. So as a carer, I feel like you need to be courageous. You have to put yourself forward a little bit, respectfully do that. And it's okay to put your hand up and say, hey, I'm here, I'm caring for these children or this child, and I really need to make the connections because it's important for them. So I think you just have to put yourself forward and, you know, just go to events. That's the best place to start, is to turn up to community events. And from there, friendships and relationships begin to bud and grow. It is a process, but your ACCO will help you do that. So... Yeah.
My next question is going to be for the group again about the types of qualities you all look for in carers. And Kylie, you touched on there that sort of outgoingness and gregariousness to meet people and to join a new community. And that's true if you're caring for Indigenous children or not. You know, there's plenty of support groups and activities for carers to meet other carers. And that is, I think, one of the most important skills or attributes of a carer is to put yourself out there and get engaged. Really, I do just want to reiterate what you said, Kylie, about your ACCO being able to help you. If you're feeling insecure or nervous about attending one of those events, I guarantee you that your ACCO will support you and will help you to engage in those sorts of things so that it feels a bit more comfortable. But on that note, I would like to throw it out to each and every one of you. What sorts of attributes or qualities do you look for in carers, or what do you think makes a good carer? Let's start with you, Stacey.
So I think, you know, one of the most important things that we look for is flexibility. Also carers that are, you know, that are curious, that are, you know, not, you know, wanting to find out information, wanting to know more, not just making assumptions about kids' experiences, about connections, about culture. So they're kind of the big ones for us, yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Stacey. Sharon?
I would say empathetic, non-judgmental, someone who's willing to join the community and be a part of the community and, yeah, be
Absolutely.
welcomed into the family.
Definitely, like a warm embrace. Victoria, what about you? What do you look for in foster carers?
I guess, you know, when we do that first interview, like, would I want to live here? Would I want to live at this place? Do I feel welcome in this place? Do I feel culturally safe in this space? My sister, she was over at my house like a few months ago and she was like, well, this feels pretty culturally unsafe. You got nothing on the walls. And I was like, well, thanks, sis. You know, I guess I'll do my job well. I guess I'll do my job better. But I think humor is a huge space, and obviously because you got to laugh or you're going to cry. Touching on kind of what Kylie said, yeah, just knowing that once you're a part of community, you can't ever get rid of us. You can't ever escape us. We'll rock up to your house now. But also making, you know, we look out for those carers that are going to go the extra mile, that are going to embed culture into everything that they do, that they don't just look at a cultural support plan once a month. They look at it as a constant reminder that, you know, they try to find things, you know, it not always relying on the worker to show up once a month and be like, oh, here's all these goods, here's some books that you can read to the child, that they are going the extra step to, you know, advocate for that child in their care, advocate for the best interests of their child in their care.
Absolutely. I liked what you said about humor and I guess humility as well. And, you know, it is okay to admit if you are, you know, if somebody points something out that your home may not feel culturally welcoming or safe, or if you don't know the answers, you know, that ability to laugh things off and get involved and shake it off. I think that is one of the most important attributes as a carer. I'm not a panelist, but I'm going to throw that one out there from my own experience, is that it is okay to not know. People often will call up and say, this is the first time I've really even thought about this. That's okay. That's what we're all here for. We've got that experience and that knowledge and we want to share it with you. As Kylie said, you know, we get really excited to chat to people and to help you on this journey. And if you decide that it's not right for you, then that's okay. We've got a couple of minutes left and I wanted to throw it out to the group if there were any sort of myths or misconceptions that people have when they often call up, or things that people often ask that you think might be helpful for people to know at this stage. Does anybody have any anything that they would like to sort of myth bust for us today? Kylie?
I do. You don't need to be an Aboriginal person to care for Aboriginal children, but you do need to be supportive and acknowledge that culture and be willing to explore that with the kids in your care. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Stacey?
I was already on mute, unmuted. So I think one of the things is around that, it's a full-time role where it's not. There's obviously different types of foster care. So there are, ongoing, more longer term foster care, there's short-term foster care, there's emergency foster care that might be just a few nights, there's, respite that, might be a weekend a month or, a weekend every 6 months. So, and I think that's part of when we're going through that assessment journey, it's around having those conversations about what's actually going to fit with the carer and their family, to make some recommendations about what sort of care they're best suited for.
Definitely. And on that note, I would like to stress to anybody listening that you do have choices and options. So as Stacey mentioned, you can provide long-term care, short-term care for a couple of months, emergency care for a couple of nights up to 3 weeks, or respite care, which is that sort of planned 1 weekend a month for a child who may be in full-time care, to give everybody a break and to give that child some new experiences. You can also choose the ages of children that you're comfortable caring for. So you can specify, primary school age or under 2 or adolescents, depending on what your lifestyle looks like and how much time you have and how much you can offer. And also where your skill set lies. I mean, I know personally I get along a lot better with teenagers than I do with primary schoolers. They've got a lot more to chat to me about. So each person that comes into fostering will have a different set of skills, a different level of experience, and you can make that choice, as well as the number of children you can care for if you're open to caring for siblings to keep them together, or if you're only able to care for one child at a time. So you do definitely have those options. Victory, Sharon, do you have any myths or misconceptions that people often ask you about that you'd like to challenge today?
I guess just the two extremes, or like there's always going to be that middle ground of like, when people think about fostering, they think about all the huge extremes, that it's going to be like your house is going to be burnt down, that, it's going to be extremely hard, or it's just going to be light and breezy, that you're just going to have a child in your care, that they're going to become part of your family. It's that, it's never going to be one or the other. It's going to be good days, going to be bad days. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Victory. It's really important for anybody considering foster care to note that all children coming into foster care will have experienced trauma, and how that presents will be different for each child or young person. So as Victory said, there are, two ends of the spectrum of extremes, but how it presents will look differently for each child. So whether you care at a CSO or an ACCO for Indigenous children or non-Indigenous children, you will get training on how to respond to trauma, how to best manage specific behaviours or emotions that come up for children and young people. You are not expected to deal with either ends of that extreme scale or anywhere in the middle by yourself. So you always have the wonderful staff at our ACCOs and CSOs that can support you, regardless of the type of trauma that the child has experienced or how that is presenting as well. So I think that was really important to note, Victory. Thank you. Sharon?
I'd just like to back up the need for like respite carers. A lot of people say they've thought about foster care for years, but they work full time and they don't have the time. Even if you can put in 1 weekend a month, every couple of months, like we're in desperate need of respite carers, just someone to give our full-time carers a break every now and then.
Sharon, somebody said to me on our inquiry line last week, actually, is there much value in me just signing up as a respite carer? What's the point? What would you say is the point, and why is it valuable to have respite carers?
Oh, look, it's valuable to give our full-time carers a break. Like every now and then they just need time with their family or time on their own, or they might need to do something family business of their own, and just to have that time where they know that there's someone they can send their kids where they're safe and looked after, and be able to take that break, it'd be enormous help for so many people.
Absolutely. I often explain it, as an auntie or an uncle or a grandparent, regular parents need to have date night or time with their own children or things like that, and to have that opportunity to have a break and reconnect as a couple, or to do things that sometimes children can't be around for, holidays, funerals, health issues, family issues, and most of us have somebody in our network that we can rely on, but it is a little bit different with foster care. So if you are considering signing up just for respite to start, you can do that as a way, for 12 months, just one weekend a month, just to get some experience, and that is absolutely beneficial to the community of foster carers that are doing it full time, and our respite carers are no less valuable to, I guess, that network of support as well. So whether it's one weekend a month, a couple of weeks at a time, full-time care for months or even years, we do need foster carers of all different types and backgrounds and availabilities and different attributes as well. We touched on, having carers who are a bit more outgoing, but if you are somebody who likes to stay at home and live quite a quiet lifestyle, that is okay too. We need all different types of foster carers, all different family types, all different household structures. So if you have children, if you live alone, if you are in a couple that is same sex or opposite sex attracted, that does not diminish your, eligibility as a foster carer. So if you are interested in fostering, we will obviously put Fostering Connections phone number in our chat, so that you can all see that. That is 1800 013 088, or you can visit fosteringconnections.com. And our role at Fostering Connections is to help answer any general questions you might have about your circumstances, and then put you in touch with an agency that is in your area. So that includes our wonderful ACCOs that you've met today, who can, start you on your foster care journey. So you don't need to take it all on by yourself and figure out all of those steps. You can give us a call. You can also call each of the ACCOs that have joined us today, Rumbalara, Njernda or VACCA. And if you're not, in the area that they service, they'll put you in touch with the right organisations. So it really is just about putting that hand up, signing up and seeing how you go. You do not have to commit from that first phone call, and you certainly don't have to commit, until you are registered as a carer. So take it as a learning journey, take it as an opportunity to find out more, and take it as an opportunity especially to find out more about the history of our beautiful First Nations culture and the impacts of foster care for our Indigenous communities more broadly. So I will wrap things up there. So thank you, Sharon, Kylie, Victory and Stacey for joining us today, and everybody who's streamed in either on Zoom or on our Facebook Live. We really appreciate it. So thanks everyone. Have a great day.